Siyata Deshmai, we're going to learn Shkalim Daf Zayin. We're going to start on the last line of Daf Vav Amud Beis. And the Gemara takes us back to the Mishnah at the top of Daf Vav Amud Beis, Moiser Nozir Lenedova. We saw there the Mishnah discusses the leftover coins, the money that was collected for different korbanos. What do you do with those leftover coins? So the Mishnah said that Moiser Nozir Lenedova. If somebody set aside money for the korbanos of a Nazir, when a Nazir, at the end of his Nazirus period, he has to bring a number of korbanos. If he sets money aside for that, and after buying his korbanos, there's still some money left over, it goes lenadava for the kayetz hamizbeach to be used to buy korbanos oila when the mizbeach had nothing to burn. Says the Gemara, Rav Chizda Omar v'hu shekorvo chatosui basoif. That's only true that it has to go lenadava is if the last korban that the Nazir bought is the chatos, and we know that the Mishnah already said previously that the rule is that anything which is a chatos, the remaining coins go lenadava, and therefore if he brought all his other korbanos and all he has left over, that means he's brought already his oila. And he's brought already his shlomim, because we saw in the Mishnah, Moisar oila la'oila. Moisar of shlomim is l'shlomim. So if the last korban that he's bringing is the chatos, and then he has leftover coins, then those coins are Moisar chatos. Moisar chatos is l'nedova. Avali korvei shlomim basoif. However, if he brought the korban chatos earlier, and now the remaining coins are there to bring the korban shlomim, and after buying the korban shlomim, he's got coins left over, it's called Moisar Shlomim. And then the halacha is not Lenedova, rather Moisron is Shlomim. Omer Reb Zira. Reb Zira argued with Rav Chizda and said no. Afilu korvu Shlomim lebesoif, even if he'd already bought his korban chatos, and he was then buying the korban Shlomim as the last korban to buy, and the coins that remained after that, halacha, it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai b'Nazir regarding the korbanos of the Nazir shetia moisra nedava. It's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that money collected for the korbanos or money set aside for the korbanos of a Nazir, it doesn't matter which korban is bought first or last, the remaining coins are l'nedava. Continues the Gemara, masnita Messiah ledain or masnita Messiah ledain. We're going to have a brisa which is going to support Rav Chizda, and the brisa that's going to support Reb Zira. Masnita Messiah Reb Zira. We have a brisa that supports Reb Zira, where Reb Zira said there's halacha l'Moshe Sinai that irrespective of which korban you buy last, the remaining coins are lenedova. It says in the brisa, Eiluhein mo'is stumen. There's a Mishnah that speaks about if you have unidentified or unspecific money, unspecified monies that were put aside for a Nazir, and he didn't specify which coins were going to be used for which of his korbanos, then the halacha is it goes l'nedava. And the brisa says, Kol shedmei chatos mu'urovis behen, if at any point the coins that were collected were going to be used also for a chatos, afilu hifresh dmei chatos, even if at that point he's already separated the coins for the chatos, and all he has left now is oila or shlomim, dmei chatos mitoicha, mois stumenhein, then the rest of the coins have those halachas of the unspecified coins of the Nazir, which are lenedova. And this is clearly like Reb Zira said, that it doesn't matter if the chatos is last or not, the remaining coins are lenedova. Masnita Messiah Rav Chizda, the brisa that's supporting Rav Chizda, the brisa goes as follows: Eilu lechatosi. If somebody says he's got coins that he set aside for the korbanos of a Nazir, and he said these coins are going to be for my chatos, v'hashar, and the rest of the coins is l'shar nazirosi, is for the other animals that I need to bring, for the oila, for the shlomim, umeis, and then this person dies. This person, before he could bring his korbanos, he dies. Then the halacha is moyalin bekulon. If somebody then uses these coins for his own personal benefit, even though these coins have been dedicated for hektish, and we know the halacha is that a person is only chayv me'ila for kochei kochim. Now, Kochi Kochim is only the Oila, not the Shlomim. So if he's got those coins which are going to be used for the Oila and the Shlomim, then he will only be Chayiv Me'ila if he has Hana from all the coins. Because if he only has Hana from some of the coins, maybe he's having Hana from the coins that are going to be used for the Shlomim, which are Kochim Kalim, and there's no Me'ila. Ve'ein Me'elin b'miktason. But if he only benefited from part of those coins, then there's no Chiyuv Me'ila, because it could be he used the coins of the Shlomim. V'lei Omar im meis yiplu l'nedava. Since the Brisa didn't say that if this Nazir dies before bringing his korbanos, then all the coins go l'nedava, and if all the coins go to Nedava, that means that they are designated now for Kayetz HaMizbeach, which is Korbanos Oila, which is Kochei Kochim. And if that's true, then there's going to be Me'ila, even if he has benefit just from a part of the coins, not all the coins, because from that point on, all the money is going to be used for Oilos. The fact that the Brisa didn't say that, and said that only if you are moil in all of the coins, then can we know that you've had hana, you've had benefit from those coins that are going to be for oila. You see clearly from there that this Brisa is supporting Rav Chizda, who says that if the chatos has been already separated, the remaining money is not lenadova, rather part of it is lechatos, part of it is leshlomim, and part of it is for the oila. Continues the Gemara of Chizda Omar, Moisar lachmei shel nazir. Besides for a nazir having to bring a korban oila, a korban chatos, and a korban shlomim, he also has to bring 2 sets of 10 loaves called the lachmei, the breads of the nazir, and he has to bring them as well. What happens if he's got either money that was set aside for those breads, or he's got the breads themselves that are left over? Then Yurkov, they have to be destroyed, they have to be let to rot and decompose. Omer Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi says, V'yois, what Rav Chizda said is true. Because la'akrivai b'fnei atzmai, just to offer those breads onto the Mizbeach as one normally would for a Nazir, einat yochil, you cannot do that. She'ein lecho lechem korev la'atzmai. Because breads are never brought as a korban without animals with them. La'akrivai im naziros acheres, to bring these breads with a different korban of a different nazir, einat yochel, you cannot do that either. She'ein lecho nazirus ba'o b'loi lechem, because every single nazir, when he becomes a nazir, he commits himself to bring the breads from his own pocket, not to take breads that belong to somebody else. Lefum kein tzarich meimar, and therefore you've got no choice. You have to say moisar lachmei shel nazir, that the leftovers of these breads that did not get used, yurkav, they have to be destroyed or let to rot and decompose. Says the Gemara, sovereign lemeimar, the Chachomim, the Bnei Yeshiva, they thought to say, Hu lachmoi, hu moisar nesachov, that the same as we just said now regarding the breads of the Nazir, the same applies for the wine, the nesachim, which is the wine that accompanies the korban oila and the korban shlomim. That if you've got that left over, they thought it was the same halacha, and you'd have to destroy it because you cannot do anything with it. Omer Rabbi Yosi bar Rabbi Bun, moisar nesachov kochei kochiminun. No, he says that since this wine is going to go into the Mizbeach, it has the status of kochei kochim, and even though the shlomim that they are accompanying is not kochei kochim, but this wine is kochei kochim, and the rule is, says Rabbi Yosi, that v'yiplu l'nedava, anything which is brought as kochei kochim, then the leftovers goes lekayetz hamizbeach, is used to buy oilos, which are also kochei kochim, and that's called yiplu l'nedava. Continues the Gemara, al daite de Rabbi Yosi bar Rav Bun, according to what Rabbi Yosi bar Rav Bun just said now, that Rav Chizda holds that even though moisar lachmei shel nazir yurkav, but moisar nesachov is l'nedava, then you've got 3 chachomim who hold the same thing. Ushmuel, Rav Chizda, v'Rebbe Elazar shloshtan amru davar echad. Rav Chizda ahad amron. Rav Chizda is what we just said now, that Rabbi Yosi bar Rabbi Bun just said in the name of Rav Chizda that the moisar nesachim, since they are kochei kochim, are l'nedava. Shmuel, what's the Shmuel that we saw in the previous Gemara, the Omer Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yossi said, Ada no tamon, before I came to Eretz Yisrael, when I was still in Bovel, Shomis Kol Rabbi Yehuda Shoel Le Shmuel. I heard Rabbi Yehuda asking Shmuel, Hifri Shiklo, if somebody separates money for his shkolim, umeis, and then this person dies, and what's the halacha? What do you do with this shekel, with this half a shekel? And Shmuel answered, Omalei, Yiplu l'nedova. It goes l'nedova. Why? Because the money that was designated for the machzas hashekel is going to be used also for kodesh kodshim, and kodesh kodshim is l'nedova. Rebbe Loza. Where do we find Rebbe Loza? The Itmar. Moiser asiris ha'eifo sheloi. We saw also previously that the Kohen Gadol, the remainder of his mincha, he had to bring every day the asiris ha'eifo. Rabbi Yochanan said, you've got to get rid of it, throw it into the Yam HaMelech. Rebbe Loza Omer Yiplu l'nedova, and Rebbe Loza said it goes l'nedova. Why does it go l'nedova? Because it's kodesh kodshim, and if it's kodesh kodshim, it's Yiplu l'nedova. Continues the next Mishnah. Moisar shvuyim, if they collected money to redeem captives, and they had money left over, they didn't need as much money as they collected, l'shvuyim, that money gets put aside in case they're going to have to redeem another captive. Moisar shavuy, however, if they collected money for a specific captive to redeem him, and there was money left over, la'osei shavuy, you give the money to that shavuy himself, to that captive who'd been redeemed now, you give him the leftover money. Moisar aniyim, if they collected money for poor people, and there's money left over, la'aniyim, they keep it for other poor people. Moisar oni, if, however, they collected money for a specific poor person, then la'iseh oni, you give the leftover money to that poor person, even though he doesn't need it anymore. You collected, you had a certain goal to take him out of his poverty, or whatever you were collecting for. You have money left over, give it to the poor man. Moisar hamesim, if they collected money for the needs, for the shrouds, for the grave, of the dead person, lemesim, they keep the leftover money for other dead people. Moisar hames, however, if they collected money for one particular deceased person, then leyerush, the money that's left over is given to his sons, to his heirs. Reb Meir Omer, Reb Meir says no. Reb Meir says that hames, Moisar hames yehimunach hachiyav elyo. It's not clear what to do with this money, because people gave the money for the dead person. He doesn't need it anymore. Can we assume that the people gave the money with the intentions that if you don't need it for the dead person, you can give it to the relatives or not? Is something which is not clear, and therefore munach hachiyav elyo, you have to just keep the money aside until Eliyahu Novi comes to determine what the halacha will be. Reb Nosson Omer, Reb Nosson says, Moisar hames, if you have money left over after dealing with the basic necessities of the burial, then boinim loy nefesh al kivroi, that you use the remaining money to put a monument on top of his grave, and that way people will remember him, and it's an honor for the deceased person. Says the Gemara, Gavur loy becheskas she'ein loy. If they collected money for somebody with the assumption that person needed the money, and then they found out that this person never needed those funds at all, it was a mistake. Rabbi Yirmiyah Sovar, Rabbi Yirmiyah holds, Meimar Moisar hames leyerush. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, like we saw before, that in the Mishnah, that if you collect money for a dead person and there's money left over, you give it to his descendants, you give it to his children, whoever's inheriting him. So here you've got money that was collected for this particular person, he didn't need it, and give it to his children. Amalei Reb Idi, the Chutra, Reb Idi from the place of Chutra, said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, Haga atzmacha, think about this yourself. When the people donated money, they donated it for this particular cause, and this cause was not true. There was no such cause. If there was such a cause, and everybody understands that it's not possible to go down to the finest amount, and you may collect a little bit more, then we can say that the moisar, the leftover, goes to the children of this deceased person. But over here, where this person never needed any money, then they didn't intend to. It could be that the people didn't intend to give the money for the children of this deceased person. You have to give the money back. Omar le, so Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Idi, Ano, loy omrus, I didn't say in an absolute level, give it to the children. I said, maybe one would consider giving it to the children. At Minoloch, but why are you so certain? Why are you, Rabbi, so certain that they didn't intend to give it to the children? How can you be so sure that we're not supposed to give it to the Yerushim? You're coming against me as if it's 100% clear that you give the money back to the people who donated it. Why are you so certain about that? Continues the Gemara. Tani b'shem Reb Nosson. We saw this already in the Mishnah. The Reb Nosson said that Moisar HaMeis, if you collected money for a deceased person and there's money left over, you build a monument over the grave with that money. Tani b'shem Reb Nosson, Moisar HaMeis, Yibon Eloi Nefesh al Kivroi, and the Brisa says in the name of Reb Nosson that you make a monument on the grave, V'yas Eloi Ziluf al Gabi Mitose, and you use the leftover coins out beyond that to sprinkle wine over the mittah, over the bed, or over the corpse, and this was an honor. It would make a nice smell, and it would be an honor for the deceased person. Continues the Gemara. Tani, ein poidin shavui b'shavui. That if you collect money for one particular captive, you should not use that money for a different captive. Ve'ein goivim talis b'talis. If you bought money to give a cloak to one poor person, don't use it to buy a cloak for a different poor person. V'ein memachin. However, if the people who are responsible, the leaders, they collected money and they did take money and give it from one talis to another talis, from one poor person to another, ein memachin biyad parnus and nekach. You don't need to protest against those people who are doing that. And we just assume that when people give tzedakah to the gaboy tzedakah, that they allow them to use the money to the best of their understanding, even though they should not have done it. You do not need to protest against them. Continues the Gemara. Tani, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel seems to be arguing with Reb Nosson that we saw in the Mishnah and the Brisa. Reb Nosson says that it's an honor for a dead person to build a monument over the grave. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ein oisin nefoshes letzadikim. Maybe he's not arguing with Reb Nosson, maybe he's just talking about a tzaddik. He says that a tzaddik, we don't make a monument over their graves. Why? Because why would you make a monument? In order that they should be remembered. Divreihem hein hein zechronim. The way tzaddikim are remembered is by their statements, their teachings that are being learnt, taught and spread, and people say over their teachings, that is the way they're remembered. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan have a masmich v'ozal oal Reb Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Yochanan was walking and he was leaning on Reb Chia bar Abba. It could be because Rabbi Yochanan was quite a big person, as the Gemara says in Brachos Daf Yud Gimel, or it could be because his eyebrows were very long, he couldn't see where he was going, as the Gemara in Baba Kama Kuf Yud Zayin says. Either way, Rabbi Yochanan had to be supported when he was walking, and he was leaning on Reb Chia bar Abba. V'hoya Reb Eliezer chomile. Reb Eliezer saw Rabbi Yochanan coming, u'metamir le mikamei, and he just hid away. He just hid. He didn't want to come past Rebbe Eliezer. And he didn't want to come past Rabbi Yochanan. So Rebbe Eliezer hid away in order that Rabbi Yochanan, he didn't want to come and meet Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan responded as follows: Tarta milayhu, 2 offenses. Hadain Bavla, this Babylonian Ovidle, he committed. Choda, one of them, Delay Shoel B'Shlomi, why didn't he greet me? Why didn't he ask me how I was? The Choda, and the second one, Mitamir, why is he hiding from me? And it was clear that Rabbi Yochanan was very angry against Rebbe Eliezer. And now there's going to be a number of attempts of people to try and calm Rabbi Yochanan down. Omali Rabbi Yaakov Ba'idi. Rabbi Yaakov Ba'idi, who tried to calm Rabbi Yochanan down. He says, Kach nehigin gabhoin, that is the conduct, that was the custom over there in Bovel, to ze'ira le shoel b'shleimei da rabba, that a young chacham doesn't greet an elderly person. The inu nagun umekaimin, and they conform with this posuk. The posuk says in Eiv, Ra'uni na'orim, that the youngsters saw me, v'nechbo, and they hid, v'shishim komu amodu, and the older people, they stood, they rose. And that posuk, you see that the youngsters hide away from the older people, and that's why Rabbi Eliezer avoided Rabbi Yochanan. However, Rabbi Yaakov Ba'idi saw that this did not appease Rabbi Yochanan. So Omar Lahu, Rabbi Yaakov decided he was going to try something else. He was going to try to sort of change the subject in the hope that Rabbi Yochanan would calm down. And he would use the question and the answer that he's about to raise that maybe will actually help him calm Rabbi Yochanan down even more. Omer Luz, Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi asked Rabbi Yochanan, Mahu lemevar kame adura or the arura, tell me. Is it appropriate to walk past the idol called adura or called arura? Is it, should we be walking past it? Or should we be avoiding it? Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, Mat palig leyokor, why are you giving so much honor or so much interest or so much notice to an idol? Avar kamoi, walk past him, v'samei einai, and just sort of ignore him, and sort of walk past as if to say, rub his eyes, as if to say, you can't see me anyway. Inaim lehem v'lo yiru. Just ridicule him. And walking past and ignoring them is just a way of ridiculing them. Omar Leis, Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi said to Rabbi Yochanan, if so, that walking past somebody and not greeting them or not responding to them and not taking notice of them is actually the opposite of respect, is actually disrespect, as you said, should be done to this idol. If so, Yois Rabbi Eliezer Ovid. Rabbi Eliezer did the right thing. He didn't walk in front of you, because the custom was that he wasn't going to greet you, because young people, those customs were that young people would not greet the older people. And if he walks past you and ignores you, that's disrespect. So it's very good that he didn't walk past you. Rabbi Yochanan says, V'oid Ovid ha bavlo. But there's another thing. Rabbi Yochanan said, I've got another reservation against Rabbi Eliezer. That why didn't he say over one of my teachings in my name? It seems that Rabbi Yochanan knew that Rabbi Eliezer was not saying over his teachings in his name, and he was very annoyed about that. So it seemed at this point Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi didn't manage to calm Rabbi Yochanan down, and Nichnasu lefonov Rav Ami v'Rav Asi. Rav Ami and Rav Asi, they now came into Rabbi Yochanan and they were going to try and calm him down. Omru loy, they said to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi, was there not an incident in the shul of the coppersmiths where there was a discussion benaga regarding a bolt sheyesh biyodei glustura that has a knob at the end of it, and this can be used as something to pound garlic, and to be used to pound and grind garlics and other objects, other food items, and so it's got a status of a kli, and they would use this bolt to bolt the door. And the question was, it's Shabbos, is it muktzah, is it not muktzah? If it's a kli, it's not muktzah. So shenechleku, and they were arguing, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yosi were arguing whether one was allowed to use and move this bolt on Shabbos, and they were getting so annoyed with each other until they tore the Sefer Torah in their rage. Says the Gemara, they tore the Sefer Torah? No, says the Gemara. Sefer Torah. They were getting so het up and annoyed with each other that by mistake the Sefer Torah got torn. There was an elder there. Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma. It was Rabbi Yosi ben Kisma. Omar, he says to Mihani, I would be quite amazed if this shul doesn't turn into a home for an avodah zarah, because we know kol hakoyis, anyone who gets angry, ki'ilu ovid avodah zarah. And Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi said this to Rabbi Yochanan in the hope that he would get less angry. Look what's happened to this shul because of anger. Calm down. V'chozar v'omar. And instead of Rabbi Yochanan calming down, he responded to Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi and says, Hakadein mechavrei? Are you comparing my relationship with my Talmud Rabbi Eliezer, who disrespected me, to Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Eliezer in the incident in that shul? Over there were two chaverim, there were two colleagues, there were two friends. Of course they shouldn't have got annoyed with each other, but I, Rabbi Yochanan, have every right to be annoyed with Reb Eliezer. Nichnas the father of Yaakov bar Idi now came in, and he's going to try and calm Rabbi Yochanan down. Omalei said to him as follows. Ksiva says in the pasuk, Ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe avdoi, kein tziva Moshe es Yeshua, v'chein also Yeshua lehisir dava mikola shetziva Hashem es Moshe. Everything that Moshe had learned from Hashem, Moshe then commanded Yeshua, and Yeshua carried out everything Moshe told him to do. So we take for granted that all the wisdom, everything Yeshua had, he learned from Moshe Rabbeinu. Can we assume, or is it correct to assume that every word that Yeshua said when he was sitting and teaching, he would say, Kach Omar Moshe, and say in the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, because it was so important? We don't yet know why, but it seems so important to Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Eliezer says his teachings in his name. Do you really think that Yeshua, every time he said the Dvar Torah, he said in the name of Moshe Rabbeinu? Of course not. Elo Yeshua would sit and teach. Everybody would know Shet Torah Shel Moshe. And everyone would know, take it for granted, whatever he's teaching us, he's learned from his Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu. Af ato, says Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi to Rabbi Yochanan, Eliezer, your Talmud Eliezer, Yoshev V'Dorish, he's learning, he's sitting and teaching Torah, and he's not saying it in your name. Do you know why? Not in disregard or disrespect to you. V'hakel yodim shat-Torah shalochi. Everybody takes it for granted that whatever Rabbi Eliezer is saying is your Torah, Rabbi Yochanan. Omar Lohen, Rabbi Yochanan then turned to Rabbi Ami Rabbi Asi and says, why do you not know how to appease me like Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi managed to appease me? Now the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, my kulehai, the boy lemron shmaitza mishmei. Why was Rabbi Yochanan so upset that Rabbi Eliezer's Talmud wasn't saying the teachings in his name? Says the Gemara, Af David bikesh oleh rachmim. Yes, it's a very important thing, and even David HaMelech begged Hashem for mercy on this point. Shenemer, it says in the pasuk, Ogura v'aholcha oilomim. That David HaMelech was davening to Hashem that I should stay around in his tents, or in the tents of the Torah, oilomim, all worlds forever. The question is, did David HaMelech really think that he would survive, he would live forever? He knew that from the Chet of Adam Rishon, everybody has to die. What David HaMelech was saying to Hashem was, I would like to merit that my teachings, my tefillos and teachings should be said over in the shuls and in the Batei Medrash. And as Shimon ben Nazira, b'shem Rabbi Yitzchok, Omar, that kol Talmud Chacham she'omrim dvar halacha mipiv ba'olam hazeh, that any Talmud Chacham, even after he passes away, that his teachings are said over in his name in this world, sfasav reichashos imay bekever, then his lips continue to utter those divrei Torah in the grave. Shneimar, as it says in the pasuk, v'chikeich keyein hatoiv, his mouth is like having a good wine in it. That the lips are moving even when they're sleeping, even to people who are not alive anymore. And it's compared, what's happening to the lips is compared to wine. In the same way as a heated mass of grapes, that kivon shemaniach odom etz boyolov, as soon as a person puts his finger on it, miyad doiviv, then the wine moves and comes up to the surface. Afsif sesem shel tzadikim, so too the lips of the tzadikim, kivon she'omrim dvar halacha mipien shel tzadikim, as soon as one says over teachings in the name of the tzadikim, sif sesem rach shesimon bekever, then their lips are moving with them in the kever. And that's how David HaMelech wanted to be la'ilomim, forever. Because if his things are going to be said in tefillah, in the shuls, and his teachings are going to be said, his dvar halacha is going to be said in the Batei Medrash, and tefillah and Torah are also compared to, tefillah is more an olam hazeh, this world concept, Torah is more an the concept of the next world, Chaye Shah, Chaye Olam. The Takrin Chadatin brings some Gemaras here. So David HaMelech, he knew that if Torah and Tefillah was going to be said in his name, then he would be as if he's staying alive in all worlds, in Olamim, and forever. And the Gemara is now asking, okay, so we understand that Rabbi Yochanan, and we already see that with David HaMelech, they wanted people to say their teachings over in their names. Okay, why? So their lips should continue to, so to speak, utter words of Torah even after they've passed away. But mahano yeshlei. What benefit, what pleasure is there for a deceased person that his lips are moving? Says the Gemara, Bar Nazira Omar, Bar Nazira, he maintains that kadein deshosi kunditin. It's like somebody who's drinking kunditin, which is wine with honey, which is very sweet and a pleasure to the mouth. Rabbi Yitzchok Omar kadein deshosi chamar atik. Rabbi Yitzchok says it's like this person who's drinking aged wine, which is very pleasurable. That afal gav deshosi le tamer bepuma. Even when he finishes and drinking, the taste is still in his mouth. Continues the Gemara. Rav Gidl Omar ha'omer shmua b'shem omra. If somebody said that when somebody is saying over a statement, a teaching from somebody else in the name of the person who actually authored that teaching, it's important that he should envision the person, the author of the statement, in front of him. Shenemer, as it says in the pasuk, ach b'tzelem yishalech ish. That means that when a person is being led by the teachings of whatever teachings he's saying over, it should be ach b'tzelem, it should be with an image. You should have the image of the person that you're quoting in front of you. Continues the Gemara. Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, Rav Odom, which is a great man, Yikra ish chazda, a regular person will call his righteousness. Zeh shar kol Odom. This is talking about regular people. V'ish emunim mi yimtza. But to find somebody, a man of precision, so where do you find such a thing? And who is this? Says the Gemara, Reb Zeira. Reb Zeira was very, very particular for being very precise, and it bothered him, and he noticed when statements were being said in a not precise fashion, a not precise manner. The Omer Reb Zeira. Reb Zeira said, we do not need to be concerned if you have a teaching of Rav Sheshes to have a gavra mefatcha. Mefatcha really means that he could see very much, but really it's just a nice way of saying that he was blind. And Rav Sheshes was blind, he couldn't see his rebbes, and since he couldn't envision his rebbes, therefore it's very probable, or it's possible, that the teachings he's saying over from his rebbes are not accurate. And therefore, if there's something Rav Sheshes is saying that doesn't feel right, you don't need to worry about that. Omar le Reb Zeira le Reb Asi. Reb Zeira once commented to Reb Asi and said, Chokim, Rabbi, you Rabbi Asi, are you familiar Bar Pasya, with this person called Bar Pasya that you're quoting him? Did you ever see him? That Omar Shmaitz Mishmei, that you're saying a statement, a teaching in his name? Omar Rav Asi says, the truth is I never saw him. But Rabbi Yechanan Omar Mishmei. But I saw Rabbi Yechanan when Rabbi Yechanan told me this, and Rabbi Yechanan saw him, this Bar Pasya, and therefore it's reliable. One point Rabbi Zeira said to Rabbi Asi, Chokim Rebbe, you Rabbi Asi, are you familiar with Rav, that Omar Shmaitza Mishmei, that you're saying teachings in his name? Did you ever see Rav? Did you know Rav that you can say teachings in his name? If you didn't know Rav, then the chances are that the teachings you're saying are not accurate. You're right, I didn't know Rav, I didn't see Rav, but I received it from Rav Ava, and he did see Rav, and therefore it's reliable. Continues the Gemara. Every generation has mockers like the generation of David. The scoundrels of that generation of David HaMelech, what were they accustomed to doing? They would go to the windows of David HaMelech's home, and they would say to him, David, when is the Beis HaMikdash going to be built? When are we going to go to Hashem's house? And they knew full well that Hashem told David HaMelech that the Beis HaMikdash was not going to be built in his lifetime. David HaMelech would say, even though they intended to anger me, which is a vow, it's as if to say that evil will befall me, if it's incorrect what I'm saying, that I was happy with the things they were saying. T'chsiv, as the pasuk says, Shir Hamalis leDavid, Samachti, I was happy, I was glad, Beis Hashem Nelech, when they would say to me, let's go to the house of Hashem. And David HaMelech was so eager for the Beis HaMikdash to be built, he was even happy to die early, just that there should be a Beis HaMikdash. Ma'aksiv, but what did Hashem tell him? Hashem told him no. The Pasuk says, Ki yimlu'u yomecha, only when your days will be filled, v'shochavto im aveisecha, and you'll be buried with your fathers. Omar le'akadosh baruch hu David, Hashem said to David HaMelech, Yomim shleimim ani moine lecha, full days I'm counting for you. V'lo yomim chaserim, there's going to be no days missing. Klum shleima bincha yibone beis hamikdash elo lehakriv korbanos tzibur. The whole reason that your son Shlomo HaMelech is going to build the Beis HaMikdash is in order to bring communal korbanos. You should know, David HaMelech says, Hashem, Chaviv olai, it's more dear to me. Tzedakah or mishpat, she'ata oiseh, the tzedakah that you do, and the mishpat, the judging, the din, the righteousness and the straight of you, David HaMelech, Yosem in HaKorban, even more than the korbanos that your son Shlomo is going to bring in the Beis HaMikdash. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk in Mishli, Asoi tzedakah or mishpat, doing tzedakah and mishpat, nivchor l'Hashem, is more acceptable and preferable to Hashem, mizevach, than all the korbanos. Hadron Aloch Matzarfin Shkalim, and with this we've finished Perek Beis of Masechet Shkalim, and Demir Hashem in the next Shiur we're going to start the next Perek.